Morala was born in the high mountains of the world called Narration. The world was full of storms, mountains, and deep oceans. It was a world where dragons ruled the sky and lightning danced through the clouds. Morala was different from the day she was hatched. While other dragon hatchlings were small and light, she was huge, heavy, and strong. Her scales were bright silver and her wings spread wider than any other young dragon. Even the elders were surprised. They looked at her with deep eyes and spoke in low voices. From that moment, Morala understood that she was not like the rest. As she grew older, she became even larger. When she flew, the wind screamed behind her. When she landed, the ground shook. When she roared, storms formed in the sky. Many dragons admired her strength, but there were others who turned away. They whispered things that cut deeper than claws. Some called her a monster. Some called her a weapon. Some said she was dangerous, not because she wanted to harm others, but because she simply existed. But the words that hurt Morala the most came from those she respected. The elders, who guided all dragons, made their judgment early in her life. They said that she was too large to care for eggs. They said she was too heavy, too strong, too wild. They said that if she ever tried to warm an egg, she would crush it by accident. If she ever tried to hold a hatchling, her claws would tear. If she ever tried to teach a young dragon to fly, the winds from her wings would throw it into the rocks. The elders said these things in calm voices, as if they were facts, not wounds. Morala pretended she did not care. She lifted her chin and spread her wings. She flew across the world, over oceans and valleys, through storms and night skies. She chased lightning for fun and raced thunder across the clouds. She hunted beasts that hid in deep forests and slept on warm stones near volcanoes. To other dragons, she looked brave and wild, but inside her heart was a silent place that never felt full. It was a place shaped like a small egg she would never have, and a tiny heartbeat she would never hear. Sometimes, during spring, Morala sat on the cliffs where other dragons built their nests. She stayed far away so that no one noticed her. From her spot, she watched small eggs glowing under soft wings. She watched hatchlings break their shells and stretch tiny wings. She watched dragon mothers wrap their tails around their young to keep them safe. Every sight made Morala's chest tighten until it felt hard to breathe. She wondered how it felt to sing a lullaby to a sleeping baby dragon. She wondered how it felt to curl around an egg and know that life depended on her touch. She wondered many things, but she never asked aloud. Year after year, spring returned, and year after year, Morala watched from afar. The elders repeated their words every season. Too large to be a mother, they said. Too heavy to protect. Too strong to nurture. They treated it like truth written in the stars. Other dragons believed it too. They admired Morala from a safe distance, but none expected her to ever raise a family. Some even pitied her, which hurt more than the whispers. Morala tried to fill her heart with other things. She tried adventure. She tried strength. She tried distance. She told herself that she did not need what other dragons had. She told herself that being a force of nature was enough. But late at night, when stars filled the sky and the world grew quiet, she curled her wings tight around her body and closed her eyes. In those moments, she dreamed of holding something small and warm. She dreamed of a tiny heartbeat pressed against her chest. She dreamed of a voice calling her mother, and every time she woke, her claws were empty. This was the life Morala knew, a life full of storms and power, but also quiet longing. A life where she ruled the sky but never the nest. A life where she was admired as a giant, yet never trusted as a nurturer. The world told her fate was already written. But deep inside, Marala carried a secret fire. It whispered that fate could still change. She just did not know how yet. The world of Neron was not just home to dragons. There were other creatures, smaller and weaker, but clever and curious. One day, a small ship arrived from a distant star system. The humans on board were explorers and scientists, studying storms, mountains, and strange wildlife. Most humans stayed on the lower lands, fearful of dragons and lightning. They observed from a distance, taking notes and trembling at Marala's shadows in the sky. But one human was different. Her name was Elise Carter. She was small and fragile compared to the dragons, but her eyes were wide with curiosity, not fear. She had read legends of dragons in her own world, and she dreamed of seeing one alive. When she first spotted Marala perched on a high cliff, her breath caught. The dragon's scales shimmered like liquid silver, her wings curved over her body like storm clouds, and her eyes glowed softly in the morning light. Other humans would have screamed, hidden, or run, but Elise only stared. Frozen in awe, Marala noticed the human immediately. The dragon's instincts warned her to strike. Humans were unpredictable. They could scream, throw fire sticks, or call for reinforcements. She flexed her wings and arched her back. A low rumble shook the stones beneath her claws. Lightning crackled faintly in the clouds above her. The air smelled of rain and ozone, heavy with power. Marala prepared to roar and scare the intruder away, but Elise did not move. She did not scream. She simply raised one small hand and whispered, almost to herself, "You're beautiful." Marala froze. Beautiful. No one had ever called her that. Not the elders, not the other dragons, not even herself. She had been called too big, too strong, too dangerous, too wild. She had been called a monster and a weapon, but never beautiful. The word echoed inside her chest like thunder and wind and fire all at once. For a long moment, the two of them simply stared. Marala tilted her head, confused. She had never met a creature so small and fearless. Elise, for her part, did not flinch at the heat from Marala's scales or the vibration of her claws against the stone. She smiled softly, as though seeing the dragon for what she truly was, not what the world said. Then the wind shifted. Storm clouds rolled closer, and rain began to drizzle. Most humans would have run for shelter, but Elise stayed, scribbling notes in a small journal while keeping her eyes on Marala. The dragon, curious and cautious, watched her work. Something inside her stirred, a quiet warmth she did not understand. Over the next days, Elise returned again and again. She brought small gifts, a basket of strange fruits, polished stones, and drawings from her home planet. She told Marala stories of oceans that stretched beyond the sky, forests filled with creatures that chirped and sang, and mammals who raised their young with gentle care. Marala listened quietly, pretending not to care. She had heard many stories before, but there was something in Elise's voice that made the tales alive. Elise also noticed things no one else could see. The scars along Marala's wings, the tiny cracks in her scales, and the sadness hidden behind her proud eyes. One morning, Elise asked gently, "Why do you watch the nesting cliffs every spring?" Marala's chest tightened. She wanted to roar, to spit fire, to make the question go away. But instead, she rumbled softly, "To see what I will never have." Elise did not recoil. She stepped closer, small hands reaching toward the massive dragon's claws. "That's not true," she said. "There's always a way." Marala felt something she had never felt in centuries of living hope. She had carried the elders' words like chains, believing she could never be a mother. But this human, fragile as she was, dared to challenge the truth the dragons had built around her. Marala did not yet understand how or why, but she wanted to believe her. On one rainy evening, Elise stayed with Marala for hours. They watched lightning fork across the sky together. Elise told Marala about her world, her people, and the courage it took to face the unknown. Marala found herself leaning closer, her enormous head brushing gently against the human shoulder. She had never trusted anyone like this. She had never felt this small and unafraid presence stir something warm inside her massive heart. By the time the storm ended, Marala realized that her life had changed. She still carried the pain of being told she could never be a mother. She still bore the loneliness that came with her size and strength. But now, for the first time, she felt a small spark of something newer possibility. Perhaps, just perhaps, her fate was not written by the elders or by her size. Perhaps someone, even someone as small as a human, could change it forever. Marala curled on the cliff as night fell, eyes on the stars. The storms were distant now, and the quiet around her was soft. She thought of Elise's words, "There's always a way." For the first time, Marala believed them, and in her heart a tiny seed of hope began to grow, waiting for the day it could bloom. The days passed slowly on Neron, and Marala found herself looking forward to the small human's visits more than she had expected. Elise came often, climbing the cliffs with careful steps and a heart full of courage. She brought gift-smooth stones, strange fruits, and little tools that she explained in her soft, patient voice. Marala listened from a distance at first, but over time she allowed the human to draw closer. Elise never judged her. She never flinched at the cracks in Marala's scales or the scars from battles long past. She never whispered about her size or strength. She only looked at Marala with quiet understanding, as though she could see every hidden ache and every secret dream that the great dragon carried. And slowly, one afternoon, after a heavy storm had passed, Elise sat with her back against a warm rock while Marala stretched her wings above. She opened a small book and began to sketch. The human's hand moved gently, capturing the curves of Marala's massive body. The way the sunlight shimmered across her silver scales, the sharp edges softened by quiet wisdom. Marala watched silently, something stirring in her chest she did not recognize. It was not pride. It was not anger. It was something warmer, gentler. Something like hope. Elise looked up from her sketches and asked quietly, "Why do you sit and watch the nesting cliffs every spring?" Marala stiffened. She wanted to hide the truth, to roar and fly away, but she found she could not. Something in Elise's gaze, steady and gentle, made her words soft when they finally came. "To see what I will never have," she rumbled, almost too low for the wind to carry. Elise did not turn away. She stepped closer, small and unafraid, and rested her hand on the dragon's claw, careful not to hurt herself. "That's not true," she said simply. "There is always a way." Marala's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever told her that her size, her strength, or her scars did not define her. She wanted to roar at the human, to say, "You cannot know." But instead, she lowered her head slightly, letting Elise's tiny hand brush along her scales. Something in her heart softened, like ice melting under the sun. Elise smiled. I know it's hard. You have carried so much pain and so many battles, but no one gets to tell you your fate. Not the elders, not the storms, not even the mountains. Only you can decide. Morela's eyes, large and silver, filled with something she had long hidden. She had lived centuries thinking she would never be a mother, never cradle a hatchling, never hear the tiny heartbeat of a dragon that needed her warmth. The elder's words had been like chains around her heart. Too large, too heavy, too strong. You will never nurture life. Yet here was a human, small and fragile, telling her those chains could break. For the first time, Morella realized that hope was not impossible. It had been buried beneath centuries of doubt, beneath the weight of her size, beneath every whisper of the elders. And yet, with this small human's words, the spark flickered awake. Do you believe me? Elise asked softly. Her hand did not leave Morella's claw. Her eyes were full of trust and gentle courage. Morella blinked. She had never thought of trust like this before. Her life had been about survival, about power, about fear. She did not know how to answer. Finally, she rumbled, a deep, low sound that shook the nearby stones. I want to. Elise smiled, warmth spilling into her voice. Then we will find a way. Together, and so, a quiet bond formed between the giant dragon and the tiny human. Days turned into weeks. Morella began to anticipate Elise's presence. She would curl her massive body on the cliffs while Elise sketched, explained her inventions, or told stories of worlds beyond Neron. They laughed softly when the wind blew papers away or when a bird stole a fruit. Morella's heart, long closed to hope, felt lighter each day. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in gold and crimson, Morella lay on a cliff and watched Elise carefully sketch a dragon egg on a small piece of paper. Morella's chest ached. She wanted that life, the life of a mother, but she had always believed it was impossible. Yet now, with this human beside her, she felt a tiny flicker of possibility. Elise whispered to the wind, "There is always a way." Morella held that sentence in her heart as she watched the stars emerge. She had no idea what the future held, no idea how she could ever become a mother. But for the first time in centuries, she felt a spark of hope. And that spark was enough to change everything. Spring came to Neron with storms and rain, as it always did. The cliffs glistened wet and sharp in the morning sun, and small dragon nests dotted the ledges, fragile legs tucked carefully under protective wings. Morella flew above the cliffs, her massive silver wings slicing the clouds, yet her eyes were drawn downward. She could see the young hatchlings moving beneath the wings of their mothers. Their soft calls, the tiny movements of life, tugged at a part of her heart she had long tried to ignore. Morella had almost given up hope. She had spent centuries hearing the elders' words, watching other dragons raise families while she remained alone. Too large to be a mother, too heavy, too dangerous. The chains of their words had always pressed upon her heart. Yet she could not turn away from the cliffs, could not stop watching the lives she longed to hold. Then something impossible happened. As she landed on a jagged rock near the edge of the cliffs, something small and cold rolled beneath her claws. Morella froze. It was an egg butt. It was not like the others. It was tiny and delicate, cracked slightly at the surface, and shivering in the wind and rain. She realized it had been abandoned, probably stolen by a thief creature and dropped in fear. The egg could not survive on its own. It was fragile, already near death. Morela's heart hammered in a way it had never done before. The elders would have left it. It is doomed, they would have said. It could never survive under your claws. But she could not leave it. Something inside her stirred, a fierce protectiveness that overpowered every fear she had carried. She lowered her massive body and curled around the tiny egg, shielding it from the rain and wind. Her enormous claws were careful, her scales forming a warm wall against the cold. For the first time, Morala felt the raw, trembling power of what it meant to be responsible for life. But fear pressed against her chest like a storm. I am too large. I am too heavy. I will crush it. I cannot move. I cannot sleep. I cannot breathe without harming it. Every warning the elders had given her thundered in her mind. She trembled, unsure how to protect something so fragile without destroying it. By accident, that was when she heard a soft voice calling from the cliff above. Elise had climbed down, small against the towering dragon, and her eyes widened at the sight. She shouted over the wind. "You found an egg." Morala lifted her head, panic in her glowing eyes. "I cannot keep it safe. My claws are too strong. My wings are too heavy. I will crush it if I try to protect it. I am not meant for this," she rumbled, her voice shaking with fear and longing. Elise took a careful step closer, holding her hands out. "Let me help," she said softly, but with certainty. "I can keep it warm. I can protect it. You don't have to do this alone." Morala blinked, stunned. A human helping her. She had never imagined such a thing. Humans were fragile, small, and mortal, yet here was one offering courage stronger than any dragon she had ever known. She wanted to roar and chase her away, to tell her this was impossible, to warn her of the danger. But she could not. Something in Elise's presence, her calm voice, her steady eyes, her belief in morale made the fear in her chest pause. Elise ran back to her camp and returned with strange human tools, soft blankets, heaters, small devices that hummed quietly, and little machines to monitor temperature. She spoke gently while she worked, explaining each step. "We'll keep it safe. I'll be careful. Just stay here with me." Morala watched, unsure how to feel. Part of her feared that her size would still destroy the egg. Part of her wanted to trust this human, wanted to believe in the impossible. But as Elise gently placed padding beneath the fragile shell and adjusted the small heaters, Morala felt a warmth that was not just for the egg. It was a warmth that filled the hollow ache inside her, her warmth of hope, of possibility, of connection. For the first time in centuries, Morala realized that she did not have to face her fears alone. She did not have to live a life defined by her size, her strength, or the elders' judgment. Together, with this small human beside her, she could do what had been written impossible, and as she curled around the egg, protecting it from the wind and rain, she felt something she had never felt before, the first stirrings of life, inside her own heart. The days that followed were some of the hardest Morala had ever lived. The fragile egg lay nestled beneath her massive wings, and she watched it constantly. Every tiny tremor in its shell made her heart pound. The storms of Neron raged as always lightning cracked across the sky. Wind tore through the cliffs, and rain hammered the rocks. Morela's instincts told her to fly away, to hunt, to feel the freedom of the sky, but she could not leave. The egg depended on her. Its life was in her claws, her warmth, her breath. Elise stayed with her. Every morning she climbed the cliffs carefully, carrying soft blankets, warming devices, and little tools. She placed thermometers near the egg, checked humidity levels, and adjusted heaters. Her hands were small and gentle, but her mind was sharp and careful. She whispered to Marala as she worked, "We can do this. We'll protect it. Don't be afraid. I'm here." Marella had never heard anyone speak to her with such calm confidence. The warmth of her voice wrapped around the dragon's heart in a way no sunbeam or fire could. Yet every day, fear gnawed at her. What if she moved too suddenly? What if her claws pressed too hard? What if the storms blew the egg away? Every instinct she had spent centuries honing told her danger was everywhere. The elders noticed. They watched from distant peaks, their voices full of disbelief. A human, helping a dragon. They murmured, "This egg is doomed. You are too large to care for it, Marala." Marala did not answer. She only curled closer, careful not to crush it, while Elise adjusted the little machines beneath her wings. The human's determination amazed her. Despite the rain, the wind, and the danger, Elise never flinched. She never complained. She never gave up. One evening, as lightning split the sky and rain poured in sheets, the egg trembled. Tiny cracks formed in the shell, sharp and delicate. Morela's chest tightened. She could feel every vibration in the fragile shell, every small sound of the life inside. Her wings wrapped tighter, shielding it from the storm. Her body pressed down gently, careful to protect without crushing. Elise whispered urgently, "It's hatching. It's ready." Morala's massive eyes widened. She rumbled with fear and excitement, her voice echoing across the cliffs. I cannot. What if I trust me?" Elise shouted over the storm. She slipped beneath the edge of Morala's wing, small and brave, and guided her hands to the egg. With careful movements, she opened the cracks, letting the tiny hatchling struggle free. It was small, silver, and trembling, with barely any strength to lift its head. Morela's heart leaped. She wanted to reach out, to nuzzle it, to feel its tiny body pressed against her chest. But she froze, terrified she would harm it. Her wings trembled, her claws hovered over the fragile creature. Elise smiled, exhausted and soaked from the storm. "It's okay, Marala. He's alive. You've done it. You're a mother." The words echoed in Morala's mind. A mother. She had spent centuries hearing she could never be one. She had carried the weight of loneliness, the chains of the elders' judgment, and the ache of longing. And now, a human so small, so fragile, had shown her it was possible. The hatchling whimpered weakly. Marala lowered her massive head, brushing her snout gently over its tiny body. Her warm breath surrounded it. She felt its life tremble against hers, and a fierce protective love flooded her chest. For the first time, she understood the true meaning of strength. It was not in her wings or claws. It was in her heart, in her ability to protect, to care, to love. The storm raged on, but Marala and Elise created a small bubble of safety. Marala wrapped herself around the tiny hatchling, careful and tender, while Elise monitored the egg and adjusted the heaters. Hours passed. The storm did not matter. Only the fragile life beneath Marala's wings mattered. Finally, the hatchling lifted its head, blinking weakly at the two giants of its world. Marala felt tears hot and rare slide down her massive snout. Elise, exhausted but smiling, pressed a hand to her heart. "He's strong," she whispered. "And so are you." Morella's eyes shone. She curled closer around the hatchling, breathing warmth and life into it. For the first time in centuries, she did not feel the elder's words as chains. She felt a new truth, that hope could exist, that love could defy rules, that a human hand could change the fate of a dragon forever, and under the stormy skies of Narration, a mother, a human, and a newborn dragon huddled together, alive and unbroken. The impossible had become reality. The days after the hatchling's birth were full of both joy and fear. Morella could not sleep. She watched the tiny dragon, now named Aaron, with careful, constant attention. Every movement, every sound, every tremor in his fragile body made her heart jump. She had carried the elder's warnings for centuries, too large, too strong. You will crush your child. Yet now she found herself learning to move with precision, to bend her massive body with care, to cradle life as delicately as she had always dreamed. Elise stayed by her side, small hands moving quickly and gently, her voice calm and full of encouragement. "He needs warmth," she would whisper. "You are the safest place he can be." Morella listened, letting the human guide her, trusting in a creature so tiny, so fragile, to show her the way. It was strange, humbling, and yet it made her heart swell with a love she had never known. Then came the storm. A thunderstorm unlike any Morella had seen in decades swept across Narration. Lightning split the sky in jagged lines, wind howled through the cliffs, and rain lashed down like arrows. Morella's instincts screamed at her to flee into the safety of the open sky, to ride the storm alone, to escape danger. But she could not. Aaron lay trembling beneath her wings, and Elise crouched carefully beside him, her eyes wide but steady. The machines Elise had brought wind and beeped, warning that temperature was dropping. The egg was gone now, but the hatchling's small body still risked shock. Morella's claws dug into the rock as she lowered herself closer, wrapping her wings around both human and hatchling. She felt the wind batter her scales, rain soak her back, lightning strike dangerously close. Yet she stayed, curling tighter, sheltering Aaron with every ounce of her massive strength. Elise adjusted the small heaters, her hands shaking as the storm's fury rattled the cliffside. "Hold him close," she shouted over the roaring wind. "Keep him safe." Morella pressed her chest gently against the tiny dragon. She felt the fragile heartbeat beneath her scales, so small, so delicate, and yet so full of life. A fierce, protective love surged through her, stronger than any storm, stronger than any lightning strike. She had thought she was too large to nurture, too strong to care. But now she realized that love had no size. Love had no limit. Love could bend even the strongest dragon to careful, gentle action. Hours passed. The storm did not ease. Morella did not move except to adjust the warmth or protect the hatchling from sudden gusts of wind. Her body ached from the strain of holding both life and trust, but she did not care. All that mattered was Aaron. All that mattered was Elise. The human whispered constantly, soothing the little dragon with gentle words, explaining every step, guiding Morella with patience. And then it happened. A tiny sound, barely audible over the storm, broke through the noise. Aaron had lifted his head, blinking weakly at the world around him. He stretched a small wing and trembled against the massive dragon that held him. Morella's eyes filled with tears she had never thought she would shed. She lowered her massive head, brushing her snout against Aaron, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat. His fragile life pressed against her. Elise collapsed against Morella's leg, exhausted and soaked. "He's alive," she whispered, voice choked with relief. You did it. You're a mother. Morala rumbled softly, a sound that was both awe and wonder. I am a mother, she thought. For centuries, she had believed it impossible. She had been told she was too large, too strong, too wild. Yet now, she cradled life in her heart and in her claws. And beside her, a human had shown her that nothing, no size, no fear, no warning could stop what the heart wanted most. The storm eventually passed, leaving the cliffs wet and glistening. The clouds drifted slowly across the sky, revealing a sliver of moonlight that shone on Morala, Aaron, and Elise. The three of them huddled together, small and large, fragile and strong, alive and unbroken. Morala had discovered something no one had taught her, that love could conquer fear, that hope could outshine centuries of doubt, that the bond between dragon and human could rewrite destiny itself. And in the quiet of the post-storm night, with the hatchling's soft breaths and the human's steady presence, Morala finally allowed herself to feel what she had longed for, complete, overwhelming, impossible joy. She had become a mother. She had found her purpose, and she had learned that sometimes the smallest beings could change the fate of the largest hearts. The days after the storm were calm, yet full of new beginnings. Morala spent every moment beside Aaron, her tiny hatchling who had already begun to stretch and flap his fragile wings. She learned how to lift him gently, how to wrap her massive tail around him without crushing him, how to hum soft lullabies she had never thought she could sing. Every movement was careful, every breath measured, but every heartbeat filled her chest with a joy she had never known. She was a mother. For centuries, she had dreamed of this, and now it was real. Elise stayed as well, teaching Morala how to care for Aaron in ways the dragon had never imagined. She brought little tools, small heaters, and blankets. But mostly she brought patience, knowledge, and a voice that always soothed. Aaron will learn to fly, she said one morning, brushing her wet hair back after a night of rain. He will grow strong, and he will have you. Morala lowered her massive head and nuzzled the human, something like gratitude rolling through her chest. Elise had rewritten her fate with her courage and kindness. The elders watched from afar, still whispering, still doubtful. Many had expected failure. Many believed that Morala's size, her strength, and her storms would destroy the hatchling. But when they saw Aaron lifting his small wings under Morala's careful guidance, when they heard the gentle hums of the dragon mother singing to her child, even the oldest and sternest elders could not deny the truth. Morala had defied expectations. She had turned impossible into reality. One afternoon, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the cliffs gold and silver. Aaron stumbled in his first attempts at standing, tiny claws gripping the rock, wings quivering in the wind. Morala coiled around him, her massive body providing balance and warmth. Elise crouched beside them, cheering softly. You can do it, little one. Mum is here. You are safe. Aaron flapped harder, wobbling, then leaped a tiny distance. He tumbled gently into Morala's claws.